I'm Lisa Watson with AutismBC. I'm the Interior Regional Coordinator for AutismBC, and I'm located out of Kelowna, BC. And this month, April, our theme this month is Amplifying Autistic Voices. So we've had several speakers so far talk about their journeys and their experiences with life on the spectrum. Today, we're very fortunate to have Jackie McMillan. She is an autistic self-advocate and a biohacker, and she's talking to us today from out of Ottawa, Ontario. So Jackie, welcome to our chat today, and we feel very fortunate to have you. And if you wanted to do a brief introduction about yourself, we'd love to hear a little bit about your autism journey.
Thank you for asking. I think it's really important for as many voices to be involved as possible. I think it makes a really, really big difference in terms of who is able to understand autism, because each one of us speaks about it in different ways. Each one of us has a slightly different experience of autism because there are different things causing our brain inflammation and the challenges that we live with. And so it's very, very useful to get lots of perspectives on what's actually going on.
Yeah, and as you've probably heard a million times as well, you've spoken to one person with autism, or one person with autism, one person with autism. Everyone is so different and everyone's an individual. So it's interesting what may work or what may help someone with autism or an autistic individual may not be the same thing that helps another person. So it's really interesting to hear your take on it as well. And I've heard that there was a story about when you went to camp when you were about 11 years old, and that really changed you. And I'm wondering if you can share that story with us.
Yeah, so before I went to that summer camp, I had maybe 5 to 10% of the time that I had the full engagement with reality, with what was around me. And the rest of the time I was kind of in the fog. And in that 5 to 10% of the time, I usually say it's like one morning every 10 days, I would have a clear brain. I would do my best to figure out what was going on, learn what I needed to learn, and then the rest of the time just desperately fake it as I was able. I was a rocker. I was a droner. I used tunes to communicate a lot at first. I had terrible pronunciation. I chewed everything in sight. My emotions were all over the map. My body was in pain a lot of the time. And life wasn't a lot of fun. And that summer, my parents were looking at making some changes, and they had sent my siblings to this summer camp before. It was a wilderness canoe tripping organization. And my siblings had done okay. They'd not sent me because they were worried about what would happen. But they thought, well, let's give it a try. Let's see. So that summer they sent me along as well. And I had 1 month of my quality of life just getting better and better and better and better. It was like, you've seen a dog with a chew toy. They grab it and then they're like, "Rrr, rrr, rrr," and they're shaking it all over the place. I was like the chew toy. My emotions were like the dog. It would just pick me up and shake me around. And then I'd be like, where did that come from? Why did that happen? What is going on? I'd have pain coming and going. I had a perma headache. And this incapacity to connect with the people around me and learn. It was just so frustrating all the time. And over the course of that month, it got easier and easier to learn. I was actually making friends with the girls in my cabin, and that was pretty amazing. There was a lot of music. There were a lot of things that were really good to the health about that environment that I didn't tease out until later. All I knew at that point in time was I was waking up cheerful. My pain levels were dropping. I realized it didn't have to hurt to digest food. My emotions were smoothing out. It was easy to learn. I was having fun. I was so happy. And it was like quality of life just went up and up and up and up and up. And then, all good things come to an end. You get on the bus to go home to your normal inner city environment. And within 2 days of getting on that bus, everything just went back in on me again. And for me, that was a really big realization inside. I couldn't communicate about this. I came home to my parents' plans having been completely overturned because my mother got cancer and was in the process of, you know, settling her affairs. And, you know, I wasn't very good at communicating things anyway. And I just thought, okay, I'm on my own for this. I have to figure it out. So I turned my life into a series of experiments. Going, okay, what's helping, what's hurting, and then digging into why. My first experiment was, okay, canoeing all day was amazing. I mean, you're rocking back and forth all day and nobody's yelling at you for rocking, you know, they're actually happy. and I thought, well, there's nowhere I can canoe in the middle of this city, but I did a lot of swimming and maybe the swimming was helping too. So there was a local synchronized swim team. I joined it. I was part of that team for a term. And instead of feeling better, my allergies went through the roof. My skin was coming off in rolls. I was coughing all the time, and I sounded like my great uncle, Jimmy, who had been in the trenches in the First World War and just had this horrendous cough all the time, like just huge amounts of mucus and wheezing, and it was harder to learn, and my gut was feeling worse, and I was like, what's going on? So I hit the school library, and you know, they didn't have computers at that point in time in the school library. They had encyclopedias, so I looked it up in the encyclopedia. And looking
the World Book.
Chlorine gas poisoning and realizing that this swimming pool is really damaging my health and my capacity and my function and all of the things that I really cared about. And so I finished off the term because I didn't feel like it was okay to drop in the middle, but I never really went back to swimming in pools again for any great length of time because I just realized this was really damaging to me. And so, you know, I just kept going on and on and on and figuring, okay, this is helping, that's hurting, why is that hurting, why is this helping, and digging into the science. And that's pretty well shaped my life since then. It took me through the science track in high school. It took me through 2 years of pre-meds, at which point I realized that our medical system is really focused on diagnosis and drugs, and it's really not focused on restoring full health. And so I went into environmental studies instead, recognizing that while the medical journals had lots of information on the impact of air, food, and water, and attitudes and beliefs and frequencies and all of these things, you weren't going to be able to have a discussion about those things with the doctor. And when I would try, you know, I think that the kindest doctor was a dermatologist I'd gone to see, because I'd read that there were all of these Chinese herbs that made a huge difference and could actually make eczema and psoriasis go away. And so I took the articles in, and I had this conversation, and this gentleman looked at me and he said, "Is it okay with you if I close the door?" And I said, "Okay." And so he closed the door, and he said, "I've read those articles and I'm fascinated by them, but I can't have this conversation with you. I can't even name the names of those articles with you in the room without putting my license to practice medicine in Ontario at risk." And I went, whoa, thank you so much for telling me. I had no idea. But in essence, we have a medical system that's really ruled by a set of standards of practice that are stifling the inclusion of new research and new understandings in treatment, unless it has to do with drugs, in which case things seem to happen like clockwork. And, you know, you can conspiracy theorize all you want. I'm not going to go there. What I am going to say is that if you want help as an autistic in Canada right now, you have to go outside the box, because there are very few doctors who will work with autistics, and the ones who will are often very restricted in what they're allowed to work with you using.
Can I speak for a second on that? I'm quite interested with what you're saying. My son is 15. He is requires high supports. He's low to limited verbal, and we've tried so many different prescription medications with him in the past from all of the different drug families, and nothing has worked. If anything, it's made his anxiety and his symptoms increased. When for myself, prescription drugs have helped me with my anxiety. So I come from it where it's worked for me, but I appreciate that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for everyone. For him, when we've brought up the idea of alternatives, such as CBD oil and things along those lines, it's very difficult to engage your doctor in those conversations for sure. And I think a lot of families feel that way as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's just, you know, I think we're due for a course correction. You know, when airplanes fly, they've got that signal they're following and they're kind of aiming for it to go past and then they have to correct. I think we've gone a little too far in the direction of pharmaceuticals, and for people whose bodies are already really out of balance, pharmaceuticals just tend to take us much farther out of balance. They don't help a lot. So, you know, what we need are interventions that help bring us back into balance again.
Our next question is, and this ties into it, I guess, what's the relationship among autism, stress, and gut issues? And if you can provide an example you've encountered yourself or from other clients. I know when my son was young, when we got the autism diagnosis, we did try, you know, we leapt at whatever we could grasp onto at that time. We were reading everything. We've tried the gluten-free, the casein-free. We've tried the naturopath. For our particular circumstances in our child, nothing did seem to improve, but if you can maybe relay some of your experiences and your knowledge.
Okay, so one of the things about gut challenges is that there is this interplay between stress and the gut. There are these cells in the gut that are designed to sort of take little tastes of what's passing by and monitor and make sure that, you know, whatever chemistry is brewing is appropriate for breaking down and utilizing what's coming through. And these tasting cells are normally kind of kept in check by another substance. And that substance gets suppressed when you have a lot of cortisol in your system. And what that means is that these tasters are kind of going, is this dangerous? Is this dangerous? You know, they're kind of getting overtired, starting to make mistakes, and starting to alert the immune system when there isn't a need. And so one of the challenges with just going gluten-free and casein-free is that you may not be lifting out all of the things that your body's reacting to. So the other thing that stress does is it really suppresses the function of your digestive fluids, and it suppresses your microbiome. All through your body are these hundreds of thousands of different microbes that in different parts of your body have different roles. You know, they're different in your eyes, they're different in your nose, they're different on your hands and skin. And in your gut, it's supposed to be like this rainforest, and it's not, because we're breathing things that kill our microbes, we're eating things that kill our microbes, we're drinking things that kill our microbes, we're putting things on our skin that kill our microbes, we're hanging around types of radiation that kill our microbes. And what it means is that if you think about a really toxic city, you know, what kind of animals live in that city? Well, you've got the pigeons and the rats and the ants and the cockroaches, the generalist species, the things that can live in really toxic environments and function, but you know, the wastes that they make aren't really useful for anything. They're not supporting our system in any way. They can just survive in it. Well, that's what happens in our gut. We get all of these generalist species that are making waste products that are, some of them really hazardous for us, really neurotoxic, but they're all that can really survive in that toxic, stressed out environment. And so it's a process of tweaking the environment more and more, tweaking what's going into the system, and tweaking the system's capacity to deal with what's coming in so that the body can start getting what it needs instead of getting constantly intoxicated, hungover, and often craving the very things that are doing the damage.
So sensory sensitivities, and how does that affect an autistic individual? And I did see something on your blog about clothes and why autistic individuals might choose to always wear the same clothes or not wash them. And I know my son is very particular about his clothes as well. He has a favorite t-shirt. And yeah, if he could, he would always wear the same clothes. And it's also, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about the change in seasons. I find really difficult for him. He will still want to wear a coat, or if it's getting, he will still want to wear a coat, or when it's changing from fall to winter, he doesn't want to wear a coat. So yeah, if you can speak a little bit about the sensory sensitivities and what you've experienced yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, I think most of us who have autism, not all of us, but most of us have what I call a uniform. And that's a set of clothes that, even if they're different clothes from day to day, fit very much the same way, so that you're not changing what you feel on your skin. You know, as someone who doesn't have really heightened sensory system, you might buy a new pair of new shoes. And you might be wearing those shoes for the very first time, and they fit different on your feet. And if you have to walk for any distance, you're really aware of how they fit differently, and maybe they're rubbing, and maybe a blister's starting, but they're not comfortable and they're distracting you. And that can get in your way when you're trying to do things that are important to you. You know, let's say you're at a wedding, there are people you really want to have good conversations with, but your shoes are driving you bonkers. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who don't have autism take their shoes off at that kind of event, because they hit a place where it's like, you know what, it matters more to me to connect to the people around me than to have the right pair of shoes on. Mm-hmm. Well, if you sort of expand that a little and think about every time we wear clothing that contacts our bodies differently, it's distracting us. And we want to engage. We want to have that exchange with the people that we're around to the whatever degree we're able. We want to participate. We want to contribute. But it's so distracting when we're wearing things that are not what our body has been accustomed to. And so every time we change, it's difficult. I'm in the transition right now. You know, this is the first week and a half that I have not been wearing turtlenecks. I wear turtlenecks all winter, and now it's like, okay, we've got this period of time where we'll try for collared shirts, and then I'll be into, you know, nice looking t-shirts through the summertime, because they fit very similarly, they feel very similarly, and I'm not derailed by the sensations on my skin being different.
And I think what I appreciate about you sharing that is because having a child who can't necessarily tell me why things are bothering him. I know I do have another friend on the spectrum as well, and he's been very good with telling me, he's in his mid-40s, about why he wants to wear compression clothes underneath his regular clothes and how it makes him feel. So to hear his perspective, even though that might not necessarily be what my child is experiencing, it does give me a little bit of insight into it as well. And for my son Brett, what we've ended up doing, and I'm sure a lot of parents do too, is we buy in bulk, right? I know he likes a particular set of runners, we buy in bulk. You know, when he grew out of the children's size at Children's Place, it was very disturbing for us. So, you know, it is a learning experience as well, but, you know, you want to keep your child comfortable, and it can be really difficult, especially when things change, as I'm sure you're aware, like brands change.
Well, the flip side is also that there are three places that those sensory sensitivities come from. And if you can start addressing the underlying causes of the sensory sensitivities, they can also back off a lot. And, you know, I've been playing with that one for years, just sort of gradually lowering down the sensations so that it's not as disruptive as it used to be.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like if we met your 11-year-old self, we wouldn't recognize you, right?
You recognize the grin.
The grin, yeah. So, but as your 11-year-old self, you would definitely, yeah, it sounds like you've evolved, you've grown so far in your journey with this.
Lots has changed, yes.
Yeah. And I know that you speak about this on your website as well. What are the 5 root causes of autism challenges?
Okay, so you don't have autism if you don't have brain inflammation. You don't have any mental emotional diagnosis if you don't have brain inflammation. If you have anxiety, you have inflammation. If you have bipolar, you have inflammation. If you have ADHD or dyslexia or Downs or Fragile X, you have inflammation. All of these things can be improved or sometimes actually flatlined if you get the brain inflammation down into the normal levels of inflammation. So there are 5 specific things that cause inflammation in the body to be bad enough that it actually gets into the brain as well. You know, the very top one is stress. The higher your stress levels are, the more inflamed your body is going to be, period, because stress disrupts your capacity to go into rest and digest. The parasympathetic end, the vagal, the relaxed vagal tone that allows your body to heal and learn and you know, respond to the moment instead of having these programmed responses to what's perceived as threat and danger. And the research on that just keeps getting deeper and richer. You know, the last few years we've seen, you know, polyvagal theory and the cell danger response, and how even your energy production shuts down when you're under high stress for long periods of time. And really, that's what autism is. This very high stress. Only the stress is coming from so many. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. There's so many different types of stress piled up that you lift one off, and you can't necessarily tell that it's made a difference. It's when you start lifting 5 or 6 or 8 or 12, or, you know, the more pieces you lift off, the easier it is to notice, oh, this is making a difference. And you often notice those differences more when you put those things back in and there's a crashing function. And you realize, wait, that hasn't, you know, been that bad for a long time. It's when you see those kinds of things that you go, oh, things were better. So stress is a huge one. If you look at post-traumatic stress disorder and you look at autistics, you see very, very similar behaviors. And there are good reasons for that. It's not easy having a body that's this fried all the time. So the next one is very high toxic body burden. Of all the autistics who've been tested to date, every single one of us has had much higher than usual toxic body burden. And what that means is that there are things clogging the gateways in our cells when they're trying to take out the trash and bring in the groceries. It means that you know, our liver can't do the job it's supposed to because it's already so clogged up with backup that it, more, I can't handle it, you know. And there are so many consequences to having toxicity in the body. But if you think about it, it's as though a body that's got a lot of toxins in it is like a city in the season of construction. And you want to go get groceries, and you do detour after detour after detour after detour, and you end up spending 8 times as much time and 4 times as much for fuel to get something done as you would if that city weren't under construction. It's like that for an autistic body. There's so many toxins and, you know, under construction projects in the way that you have to detour hundreds of times to get any single thing done. And the cost in nutrients and energy is just through the roof. So toxicity is the second one that can cause really high inflammation, particularly when the toxins get into the brain, and that one hurts. That one hurts a lot. So the next one is gut dysbiosis. Now, if you look at the statistics, depending on the health professionals or the researchers that you're consulting, it's somewhere between 65 and 85% of autistics have gut dysbiosis and leaky gut. And what's really interesting is in the general population, 60% of people who have leaky gut have no gut symptoms whatsoever. The only way that you know they have leaky gut is because they've got arthritis, or they've got depression, or they've got, you know, memory challenges coming on, or they've got diabetes, or they've got heart disease, or they've got one of the hundreds of inflammatory cancers, you know, one of the hundreds of inflammation-caused diseases out there. Anything that isn't, almost anything that isn't infectious is inflammatory. So if it isn't a cold or a flu or a virus or something, chances are it's inflammatory. So inflammation is hugely sourced in leaky gut, because leaky gut's letting, you know, poo and microbes that should never get into your body should only be in the gut. And, you know, the toxins those microbes produce and undigested food, all that gets into your bloodstream, it gets carried all over your body, and your cells are going, what do I do with this? And some of it's neurotoxic, you know, some of it's toxic to your cells, some of it's toxic to your DNA. So, you know, dealing with leaky gut is a huge one. And most of us, if not all of us, in the autistic spectrum have gut issues. And we're not necessarily very good at spotting that in our culture, because we're so stressed, we think it's normal not to go poo for days in a row, you know. Whereas if you're really healthy, you're actually having a bowel movement in about 20 to 30 minutes after each meal. And so that's the third one. The fourth one after that, you know, can you really say it's different? It's hard to say. Again, if you talk to health professionals, leading researchers in the field, they'll say that your immune system is between 60 and 85% the same as your gut. It's the same actions that are happening that are immune or that are gut. And so the overlap in the two systems is massive. So sometimes the thing that causes, some autistics seem to be autistic right from birth. Something happened in utero that really made them have to use a lot of the back roads and not be able to get things done effectively. Sometimes it happens, sometime between year 1 and year 3, or rather, birth and year 3, and sort of the commonest stretch of time, where there are just too many stressors piled on the system, and you see the system go and spirals down to a much lower level of functioning. So whether it's, the leaky gut that happens first, or the gut dysbiosis, or whether it's some kind of immune overwhelm from a virus or parasite or, pathogenic bacteria or a mold or fungus or something that got a hold in the system, and the immune system got overwhelmed, couldn't fight it off. 6 of one, half dozen of another, but they are different enough mechanisms in the body that we're still calling them separate systems. The immune system plugs into the spleen and the lymph and a bunch of other things, where the digestive system is really just the long tube from mouth to nether end. So that's the 4, is the immune system. And then the last one is actually direct compression of nerves. Sometimes, coming through the birth canal, it's a bit of a tight fit, and part of the skull gets pressed down, and that part of the brain doesn't light up the way it's supposed to because the blood flow isn't getting through the way it needs to. Sometimes it's a couple of the nerves in the spine that get pinched. For me, my vagus nerve got pinched, and in my 30s, I had some visceral manipulation work from a really talented craniosacral therapist that freed that up, and I just saw this leap in digestive comfort and digestive ability that I totally hadn't expected. And I also saw, that it got easier to relax, which is hard. Many of us have a terrible time falling asleep. So those are the 5, the stress trauma continuum, very high toxic body burden, gut dysbiosis, immune overwhelm or overchallenge. And then the last one is this direct nerve impingement, that if you can free it up with particular types of therapeutic work, you can have a much better communication between various parts of your body and much greater comfort.
It's interesting, thank you. Yeah, we had just started craniosacral with my son before COVID-19 hit. So of course we're on hold right now. She can teach us some of the things online, but yeah, he seems to respond quite well to it. We haven't done it long enough to see benefits or anything like that. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that you've had a good experience with that as well. So
very calming to the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just working on freeing up the nerves. It also takes you into a very, you're not necessarily asleep, but you're, that sort of falling asleep stage where everything is very, very relaxed. Mm-hmm. That's one of the most healing states the body can get into. Right? Craniosacral therapy is one of the techniques that's really good at taking us into that state.
I think a lot of the things that you mentioned too, the symptoms or the causes as well, I think even as far as us neurotypicals, right, with the stress and things like that, I think there's a lot of things that probably impact us as well, like that. For sure, stress. I know we're all feeling more stress these days with COVID-19 and what's going on in our world. So yeah, no, I really appreciate that insight as well. So
it's really useful that you bring that up. A lot of people get really triggered by autistic behaviors, and my informed opinion is that the people who get really upset by the way autistics behave in really stressful circumstances are people who've stuffed so much of their own stress down and hidden so much of their own trauma away that when they see other people expressing it, they can't stand it. It's mm-hmm. overwhelming. What you see in families of those of us who have autism, virtually every family member is very high inflammation. Autism doesn't come from nowhere. And so when I work with families, I usually, I'm not just working with that one child or that one teen or that one, adult child, adult dependent. I'm sort of, saying, okay, well, we've got to make all these changes for the whole household. Let's just get a little list for each of you of what health issues you'd like to see change. And as we go through, we're just going to monitor if we're getting the results that you want. I have not worked with a family yet that was like some families, not everybody's willing to make the changes. And that's a lot harder for the autistic individuals. The whole family is willing to make these changes that take inflammation down. What you see is the whole family's health going up and up and up and up and up. And it's really fun.
If everyone's still eating chicken nuggets except for the autistic individual, that's going to make it really difficult.
Well, a lot of the foods that are worst for us are addictive. I know of autistics who've been eating the dog and the cat food because we can smell when the ingredients are in there that are going to feed the unhealthy microbes in us that drive our cravings. And we don't care if it's meant to be for the dog or the cat. We'll eat that stuff.
Well, and okay, so this is interesting, and this is a little bit of an offshoot, but it applies to my son personally. So lately, he has started eating things, and you mentioned chewing when you were younger, but he's eating tree bark, he's eating leaves, he's eating rocks. We've talked to his pediatrician about the possibility of pica. They don't seem to think it's pica, but he's gone from being not a very oral child, teen, to now everything's going in his mouth, and we can't quite figure this out.
Okay. So being a very oral person originally and having backed that off, I used to chew everything. And the reason is that perma-headache that I talked about. When the tongue moves and the jaw moves, it tugs on the fascia, the little, it's like saran wrap around all the tissue in your body. And that movement of the tongue and the jaw actually pulls on the fascia inside your head. And when that fascia is inflamed and uncomfortable, chewing gives you momentary relief from that pressure and heat and discomfort. It's like, I don't know if you've ever worn climbing shoes. When you first put them on, they're too tight on your feet because they're supposed to be able to wedge into cracks and so on and, you know, make your feet kind of hoof-like. And what happens for me is the longer I wear those, the more uncomfortable it gets. Now I can take shoes off in an airplane. If my feet just start to swell, it's like, okay, you know, off come the shoes, that's it. I can't take my skull off. But what I can do is tug on those membranes and ease off the discomfort. So I think your son's giving you some signals that he really, really needs help getting that brain inflammation down.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. So it's interesting because it's a fairly new development. So yeah, no, thank you. I think it's amazing that we have all these autistic voices that are speaking now and you know, talking about their experiences, and I think it's fabulous. I'm just wondering how, because there is a sector of the autistic population that is low verbal, nonverbal, such as my son. How do we advocate? How do we get their voice across? Because for me, it seems like, you know, I support families throughout the interior. Most of the families that I speak with or that I support, I would say my son is in the minority. Most of the individuals have kids that require less supports. And I find that my son being profoundly affected or requiring high needs, he is definitely in the minority sector. And I'm just wondering, how do we represent these individuals and how do we advocate for them?
Well, one thing to recognize is we focus a lot on verbal and written skills. We forget that the first language for all of us is body language. And the body language of autistics is stress, discomfort, pain, or overwhelm, or overcharge. You know that the flapping that you see. That's I have so much zing in my system that I can't be still. I've gotta get up and I've gotta pace it out and flap it out. Body language tells you a huge amount about what's happening in that body, but we haven't had translators. And this is a big part of what I try to do for people is say, okay, you know, these behaviors that you're seeing, this is where it's indicating that the inflammation is likely highest. These are the kinds of things that'll bring inflammation in those places down. We could do a bunch of tests that are incredibly expensive that you could do through a naturopath, or if you can convince a medical doctor, sometimes through a medical doctor, usually not. But, you know, you can get those tests done, or you can do this little tweak in your household and you can go, oh, that helped. Or, that doesn't seem to be doing all of it. You know, maybe there's more to it. And then you go a little deeper, you try something a little deeper. I'm a real fan of the trial and error method because it turns everyone in the households into a believer. Oh my gosh, food is making a difference. Whoa, that water filtration. Wow, that really changed. You know, when you do these kinds of things, you might only see little changes, but they add up. And each new tweak that you do, each holiday that you go on that you can't keep those tweaks in place and you see a crash in function, it's all part of the learning process of what's helping, what's hurting, and how do we put more and more pieces in place that help. Because the reality is our economic system has been demanding that we live in ways more and more that are not healthy for any of us, and more of us are sick all the time. You know, more seniors are losing their capacities earlier. More kids have allergies and asthma and learning disabilities and cancers and, you know, just horrid stuff. And adults of working age, we're just seeing inflammatory disease rates skyrocket right now. So it's not good for any of us. It's just that things that people wouldn't change for a child, and they wouldn't necessarily change for a senior. If it's a kid in your family, You know, it's like, I want that kid to have as good a life as I can possibly make it, and I will change that. And you'll see aunts and uncles change, you'll see neighbors change, you'll see grandparents change because they start seeing, oh, this is making a difference for that child. And, you know, okay, when I do those things, wait, I feel better too. So where we might not do something for ourselves, you know, I think this is part of the reason autism is here. When a child is hit hard, we'll make changes we wouldn't make for anyone else, including ourselves.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. So it almost ties into self-care, right? So, you know, a lot of caregivers put their family first and the individuals first, but, you know, everyone needs to do what's going to improve their lives as well. So, no, thank you. Up on the lifestyle, would you be able to maybe give us your top 2 or top 3 of the things that have helped improve your life over the years that were just made a huge difference for you? And
you know, forget the top 2 or 3. I'm going to give you a list of all 12, and I'm just going to call that up right in front of me so that I don't miss any. What I did was, a friend of mine and I organized these in order of how fast an impact they can have on your body, on your system. And we did that because we were looking at it as a survival issue. So the first thing is your beliefs and attitudes. That's what makes you stressed. And stress is a fraction of a second. You know, some thought comes up and your system is immediately in a stress response. So that's really the first one to look at. And you know, we keep revisiting that one on the way through because all of it is kind of cumulative stress, but how we respond to the stresses is the first and biggest thing. So the next fastest is air. You know, if there are contaminants in the air that you're breathing that you have a reaction to, within seconds, you're being impaired. And most autistics, if you ask them, are like, you know, keep that scent away from me. No, I'm not going into that candle store. Forget the department store. I'm not even walking in the door because it's so toxic right by the door. We don't like fragrances. And most of us, you know, many of us won't wear clean clothes because of the laundry products they're made with. Laundry products are a shortcut to pain for me. You know, if I walk past somebody's laundry outlet where their dryer vents put out neurotoxins so densely that I can have impacts for 5 or 6 days afterwards.
wow.
They hurt. They really hurt. So air is the next one. The next one after that is, you know, it takes minutes when you drink something, like me doing my herbal tea. When you drink something, good or bad, impacts are registering on your body within minutes because it's basically just water diffusing through the lining of the gut into your bloodstream. There's no digestion really needed. And so water within minutes, if there are contaminants in your water, and they don't have to be large amounts. We tend to say, oh, you know, well, that amount isn't going to hurt you. What we're forgetting is that hormones in the body are in the parts per million, parts per billion quantities. And hormones are what direct our body to manufacture and move and take care of and rebalance and all of these things. When we have water contaminants in those ranges, they're acting like hormones in the body, prompting all kinds of shifts and changes that aren't good for us. And the same with air, you know, air and water. So then the next one is foods. Mm-hmm. Food, we've got the whole digestive challenge of you not having the right critters in the guts and not breaking food down to the size that our cells can actually use. But that's usually hours, you know, sometime between 2 hours to 6 days, you'll be seeing impacts from food. And, you know, different foods are going to work for different people. And so it's a real trial and error process, figuring out, okay, what's working and what's not. The next after that is sort of environment. And it's not just outdoor environment. It's not just indoor environment. We put those together because we really have to look at what are the pros and cons of most of our constructed environments and the natural environments that we do surround ourselves with. And that, you know, that can entail stress, air, water, food. You know, it can tie all of those in to your location. If you're living right next door to a conventional farm that's spraying glyphosate, well, you're going to have all kinds of problems because you're going to be chelating out minerals that your body needs for a whole bunch of processes. So you're going to have a lot more construction and a lot more detours to get things done. You're breathing in, drinking in, eating in antibiotic all the time, because glyphosate is an antibiotic. So you're killing off your healthy microbes all the time. You're not killing off the fungal denizens in your system, and it'll often give them a chance to really explode. So environment is the next. After that is skin. We don't think about what we put on our skin.
Mhm.
We don't think about, oh, I don't want plastic next to my food. Well, what about plastic clothing next to your skin? Your skin is designed to absorb things.
I always think about the people that are very organic or very natural about everything, yet still do their hair dye or still wear makeup. So yeah, the skin, yeah, it's your largest organ, is it not?
Well, it's really nice that they've actually started coming out with non-toxic makeup, because I do a lot of my work online, and online, a camera really washes you out.
Yes, I wore lipstick for the first time today.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm being interviewed. I guess I better put some lipstick on. But at least I know I have lipstick that isn't going to make my lips peel.
Right.
When I was in high school, which is the first time I really tried lipstick, I'm like, I can't use this stuff. My lips basically shed entire layers. As soon as I put it on, they would start peeling.
Wow.
Yeah. My skin was very clear. Do not do this to me. So then the next one after that is, what practices do you do that help your body in its normal cleansing? Because our bodies are designed to, your brain's supposed to drain into your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system's supposed to drain into your bloodstream and get cleaned up by the liver and kidneys. Liver and kidneys are supposed to drain via the bile duct into the small intestine. Small intestine is supposed to drain into the large intestine, and the large intestine is supposed to poop regularly. Well, if you've got something clogged, let's say you've got an infection between the brain and the rest of the lymphatic system, your brain can't drain properly. So at nighttime, when it's supposed to be doing its, scrubbing and cleaning and detoxing, it might get some of that done, but it can't actually dump stuff. So you're still soaking in it. So cleansing is how much are you supporting your system in doing what it's supposed to do, and how much are you noticing when it's not doing what it's not supposed to do.
Okay.
And then frequencies. Some light is good for us. Some light is harmful for us. Some sounds are good for us. Some sounds are harmful for us. Some radio frequencies and ultrasound and so on are good for us. Some are harmful for us. And we don't distinguish. We just, put them all out there and walk around in these manufactured fields all day that can seriously disrupt our microbial health. It's not that they aren't affecting ours, it's that it tends to be much slower, and our cells have better buffer zone. They've got a double cell wall around them that kind of performs like a Faraday cage from physics. It protects what's inside the cells a bit, but microbes don't have that kind of protective cell wall. And so we're destroying our ecosystem. Our microbes that are supposed to be helping us are getting killed off by the lights that we're exposing ourselves to, or sitting in front of a computer without protection of some sort. So frequencies. And then there's crises. And you could call this stress, but I call it more, how organized are you to manage your life to minimize the likelihood of falling off the wagon? And so it's a thinking ahead and organization piece of recognizing where is each one of us most vulnerable, and how do we buffer ourselves from those vulnerabilities so that we're able to show up as our best selves for the maximum amount of time. So then the next one is kind of a combined media and addiction piece. Our global economic system is a system that encourages addiction. And it encourages it in a bunch of ways and on a bunch of levels, because the reality is that when people are afraid, they buy more. And our economy wants us to buy more all around the world. And
probably a lot of buying going on right now.
Yeah, a little less than usual because there's a lot of things that aren't available, but yes. Yeah. So the interesting thing is that where addictive behaviors come from, people talk about autistics who have compulsive behaviors, and they just can't stop. And I've been there. I do that.
My son.
And they're the very same factors that back the non-autistic population away from needing addictive behaviors and compulsive behaviors are the same ones that cause autistics to back away. It's just that for autistics, it's a lot harder to meet the needs that would fulfill the gap that we're trying to fill with addiction. And fear just makes it all worse. So here we are with COVID-19 making everything spin out, you know? It's silly the way we're responding. So the next one is socialization. And, you know, this is one of these make or break things. Doesn't matter who you are or where you live. If there are people being kind and friendly and welcoming and polite, you can make things work. And if there aren't, if you've got enough money, you might be able to buffer yourself, but you can learn to create the kind of social environments that allow for greater blossoming. And a large part of that is looking at the forces of economy and addiction and fear and working to counteract those in multiple ways. And this is you know, this is one of the slower things, but when you put it in place, it's one of the most rewarding. There is nothing that will build your immune function faster than the quality and quantity of relationships in your life. There's nothing that will quench inflammation faster. And so once you've sort of dealt with the things that are dragging you down really quickly, which are on that first end of the scale, you can start working on the things that are going to build you up really quickly.
I noticed that from a personal perspective on that, just one thing that I've changed myself is I noticed I was always saying I'm sorry or, you know, apologizing, especially when my son was, maybe his behaviors were a little not so socially appropriate. And instead I've taken to saying, thank you for your patience. So, and the difference between how I feel when I'm saying I'm sorry and when I say thank you for your patience, and the people respond, they're like, oh, no problem. You know, what do you need? Right? It's an amazing difference. It just changes your perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the second last piece is this whole understanding that you can't separate the mind, the body, the emotions, the spirit. It's all intertwined. You know, quantum physics, we're all energy beings. And what affects one part of us affects all parts of us. So for us to have just a mental diagnosis or just an emotional diagnosis or just a physical diagnosis, it doesn't work that way. Our bodies are much more integrated than that. You can't, you know, with a car, you can take out a piston and you can put a new one in and, you know, new spark plug, clean it all up and have the engine work like nothing changed, except that it's working better because it's a new piston. But if you try to put a new knee into a senior, you know, the hips are affected and the feet are affected and the spine is affected and the emotions are affected. And then there's the recovery from the surgery. And you can't separate any one part of our body. We're not machines, we're ecosystems. Every part of us fluxes and responds to every input, every output. And we have to recognize that in how we live. And then the last one is recognizing, you know, none of us can do everything all at once. As much as we'd like to, oh, just get it done. No, it's a process and it's a spiraling process. You know, you've dealt with a certain layer of water issues. And then, you know, your next time through, you're like, okay, so we got the drinking water taken care of, but we still got, you know, the dishwasher and the laundry that are throwing this steam into the air that's got a whole bunch of volatiles in it that aren't good for us from the local industry. So, you know, do we want to go for whole house filtration? There are layers of how far you go, depending on how far you need to go. But there's this process of reconnecting with, okay, where are we at? Is this good? Is this good enough? Or are there pieces that still aren't good that we really want to see if we can keep tweaking and improving? And so there's this ongoing spiraling up and up and up towards where you want to be. And it's a recognition that you've got to appreciate where you are. You've got to say, wow, look at how far we've come up this spiral already. And that you've celebrated, you know, every little gain you've made. But you've also got to recognize, okay, we're still dealing with this. And this is a significant weight on the capacity to have good quality of life, to feel like a contributing person, to feel like you're participating fully. And so it's this process of revisiting and building on what you've done before. And you know, to think you're gonna get everything done you know, my promise when I work with intensively with the family is that in 6 months, we're going to get you to a place where you know what's helping, you know what's hurting, and you are really clear on what you need to keep doing to get better and better results over time. But I can't tell you what function will be gained in 6 months, because I can't tell you what a family is going to be ready to do, because it's a family system. And that family has to be ready to kind of look at, okay, what can we do? What's possible with where we are right now on this spiral?
Very, very interesting. That you definitely had a lot of great highlights, especially when I asked for 2 or 3. That was awesome. So I have a list of 12. So Jackie, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. I wasn't sure how this was going to go. I haven't done a Zoom interview like this before, so I was a little bit anxious about it myself. So your wealth of knowledge, and it was great to speak with you. And if you're still comfortable, we would love to have you back in May to talk about our theme for May is self-care, which I think is so important right now with the world we're living in. You know, even if that means, I know for myself, I think I do practice pretty good self-care. I know there's a lot of families out there that have some added pressures and they're not getting the breaks they need right now. And, you know, but even to take that 10 minutes and just breathe, right? So it's so important for us right now, because I know when I'm stressed, I feel like I'm in a hamster wheel and I can't get anything done. I did appreciate when you sent your email and you said, you know, this is how I take care of my day. I tackle my day in chunks kind of thing. So no, we would love to have you back, and you're a wealth of knowledge, and it was delightful to speak with you today.
It's been really nice speaking with you today too. I'm looking forward to next, and I'm glad that this has been useful to you.
No, it's been great. So I wish you well, stay healthy, and we will be in contact with you regarding May, if that's all right.
Okay, you stay healthy too.
Okay, take care, Jackie. Thank you. Bye.